My name's David Benzing, and I've taught until recently. I just retired from Oberlin College, where I taught biology. Basically, I'm a plant biologist, and I've also been part of the environmental studies program there. I've taught courses in that program, and I continue to give lectures and things on climate change in different venues now other than Oberlin College. This wetland you see right here is a constructed wetland that was put in when these retirement homes were built. That was part of the mandate to leave some of the area as conserved habitat, natural habitat. This was vegetated with a number of species that are not particularly common around here, so it serves as a nice reservoir of material for our use. Most of what's here, with the exception of these early arriving trees, are going to go very slowly. Everything else you see right here is going to be gone in another couple of decades, as you see a young forest, what is called secondary forest, regenerating here. A good part of the land that was tilled up until a few years ago now has been abandoned, and we're standing in one of those abandoned fields. This is a field that was used for commodity grain production, meaning soybeans and feed corn. And what we're seeing here is the early stages of what's called Oldfield Succession. The process that takes place when land is abandoned, or in this case, what was basically bare ground, just supporting commodity grains, and you get regeneration, and it's specifically a kind of regeneration known as Oldfield ecological succession. So succession is a process whereby plants that arrive during the sequence essentially replace those that preceded them. And those that come early tend to prepare the site for those that succeed them. It's essentially a conditioning of the site, and the vegetation changes accordingly until, in this part of the world, what you would have on this location is effectively deciduous forest. Stage you see right here supports a lot of grasshoppers, different kinds of insects that are adapted for open, sunny habitats, and they feed on these herbaceous plants. When they're displaced and this site is occupied by forest, then you get a much greater diversity of animals, just like you get a greater diversity of plants, and those animals will be feeding on a greater variety of plants, living in a variety of ways that aren't possible here right now. So succession involves not just plants, the animal life is following in parallel. This area, compared to a mowed lawn, a weed and feed lawn, where somebody's being very careful, hiring somebody to come in and use fertilizers and herbicides, the intensity of that kind of a system equals any commodity grain operation on an comparable area basis. This virtually requires no inputs of fertilizer, pesticides, and certainly you don't mow it. So effectively, this is an energy neutral site as far as inputs are concerned. In years past, up until really about World War II, when advances in transportation, refrigeration, and such allowed freezing, allowed either fresh foods or at least frozen foods of any given kind to be basically available year-round. Prior to that, of course, we lived basically on what was available as far as fresh things are concerned when seasons permitted. We simply haven't had the need to do that because of the availability of all of these long-distance transported fresh fruits. But assuming that we evolve, we're going to have to include in that evolution a reduction in demand on energy, electricity, and certainly gasoline and things like that. Those supplies are finite, and it's increasingly obvious that there are political pressures that are making what supply is out there less and less reliable. So, I foresee the time not too far into the future where, for a variety of reasons, we're not going to be able to be so gluttonous so far as energy use is concerned. It really isn't a sustainable arrangement in the sense that the inputs, if you consider the fossil fuels, the manufacture of that equipment, the weed killers and all, if you sort of normalize that, talk about calories in both what you get out in terms of a product, shelled corn and soybeans, versus what you put in to raise that crop, it's about 10 to 1, a very unfavorable ratio. 10 units input, 1 unit output, to say nothing of the CO2 that's generated in expending those 10 calories to get the 1 out. That's another cost. It's not factored in there. It's not sustainable. But it's clear that if we weren't reliant, didn't have access to long-distance refrigerated transport, we would have to change our diet fairly substantially. But it's a cultural thing. People are not used to this. But in time, cultures change, tastes change, and with encouragement, hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later. It's so distinct in its color and form that you're not going to make a mistake with this one. There are a lot of edible fungi, but some of them have close relatives or look alike. Medicinal plants, ginseng, that kind of thing, because that requires a forest soil and deep shade. That's just the native habitat of that plant. Golden seal's another one that requires forest understory conditions. And of course, you can grow shiitake mushrooms. Those should be in a shady spot where the humidity's high, and best place to do that, although the mushrooms don't need light, you're going to get the moderated temperatures and the moisture that those organisms need as wood-rotting fungi in a forest situation. So there are a number of products, and then of course maple syrup, everybody knows about that. And there's some